This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Offshoots of latest xenophobic incidents in South Africa spark off reaction across Africa. WFP stops distributing blended food in Uganda as people fall sick in Palabek Refugee camp. And South Sudan urged to trace over 4,000 people separated by conflict. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Ucha joins me now with all your business headlines.
Thank you, Karen. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. China lodges a complaint against the US at the World Trade Organization over American import duties. And Cape Town, South Africa is all set for the 2019 World Economic Forum on Africa that starts on Wednesday. Of course, all that coming up within the program. Back to you, Karen.
Thank you, Ucha. We begin the hour in South Africa, where several African governments are expressing concern over the ongoing violence against foreigners. The Nigerian government has summoned the South African ambassador to explain what it terms incessant killings of Nigerians and destruction of their property. Well, according to a statement, the South African High Commissioner has proposed that the Nigerian government post security officials to its South African mission to help create a harmonious working relationship with locals. For its part, the Ethiopian embassy in South Africa has called on Ethiopians living in the country to close their businesses and to keep a low profile. Ethiopians have also been warned against wearing expensive jewellery in areas affected by violence. Meanwhile, the Zambian government has cautioned its truck drivers to avoid travelling to South Africa to avoid being targeted. Several people have been arrested by South African police as violence continues in parts of Johannesburg. Meanwhile, the African Union Commission Chair, Musa Faki Mohammed, has also added his voice in condemning the attacks against foreign African nationals living in South Africa. In a statement, Mohammed denounced the looting and destruction of property owned by foreign investors. He also commended the South African government for the arrests made, but called for further immediate steps to protect lives and property. Nigerians living in South Africa are calling on their government to engage with its South African counterparts to guarantee their safety. Here's CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with more.
The violence was sparked by the killing of a taxi driver in Pretoria last week. Reports state that an alleged drug dealer shot and killed a taxi driver. And South African taxi drivers and locals instantly retaliated, taking the matter into their own hands. Several shops were looted and burnt down in the city. This incident started a series of destructive events across the Gauteng province, South Africa's economic hub. In recent years, South Africa has been grappling with xenophobic attacks. Migrants and foreign nationals have had to defend themselves from violent attacks by some South Africans. Then Monday saw the destruction of over 50 shops and business premises. The shops are mainly owned by Africans from countries in the rest of the continent, such as Nigeria and Somalia. Nigerian organizations based here are now calling for their government to engage with its South African counterparts to put an end to the violence and attacks.
We call on South African government to do more to stop the current attacks from spreading to other areas. We call on Nigerian government and other African countries leaders to take collective efforts in engaging our host country, South Africa, and its government to find a better way to prevent these kind of inhuman acts from occurring going forward.
We further appeal to the African Union to engage the South African government to find solutions to this ugly demon of hatred of other Africans living in South Africa and ensure the safety of everyone therein. We call on all African migrants communities to respect the laws of our host nation and remain law-abiding.
These organizations also dismissed allegations that Nigerian nationals living in South Africa are often involved in crime activities.
We, the Nigerian student community in South Africa, are not participating in any form of crime as alleged as the cause of the attack, but are here to study and improve the African continent at large.
The Nigerian government has dispatched a special convoy to South Africa to convey its concerns. The convoy is expected to arrive here in South Africa on Thursday. Yodi Sanjamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, following what's been happening in South Africa, where dozens of people have been arrested in the wake of this violent unrest in the capital Johannesburg and nearby towns, we spoke to Gebrand van Heerden, analyst and researcher at the Centre of Risk Analysis at the Institute of Race Relations.
We have seen that the violence that have erupted in the Johannesburg CBD and in the Pretoria CBD are mainly in areas where you find large groups of people from Somalia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria, foreign nationals from who own businesses and shops in these areas. A lot of people are of the opinion that this is actually a spillover from xenophobia that originated in the Pretoria CBD last week, where we saw taxi drivers allegedly retaliating against the killing of one of their own members, another taxi driver, allegedly by a Nigerian national. If you look at the history of South Africa, South Africa has had many bursts of xenophobic violence occurring since the 1990s. And it is also not that surprising given the difficult and turbulent time that South Africa is going through at the moment. We recently heard that South Africa's unemployment rate has increased to nearly 30%. Young people who are entering the labor market, around 50% of them will struggle to find a job in the next year. We've also seen rising inequality. We've also seen small businesses coming under immense pressure. This is partly due to low economic growth and some hostile policies from the government, too much regulation on small businesses. So people in South Africa, especially those in working class and poorer areas, are having a very tough time. And this creates an environment of frustration, of anger, and social tension.
To other African news now. South Sudan's government has deported 4 British nationals and 8 Kenyans. They work for a private security company that's been accused of owing the country hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax. The company is also accused of lying to its employees by paying them in local currency instead of dollars. That's contrary to their contracts. CGTN's Patrick Hoyt now reports.
Those deported include 4 British nationals, 2 Filipinos, 1 Tanzanian, 1 Thai, and 8 Kenyans. They were employees of a private security company known as Insight. The company has been operating in South Sudan since 2006. It employs more than 5,000 South Sudanese staff. The company provides security to more than 100 companies, embassies, international non-governmental organizations, and humanitarian organizations in South Sudan. The government now claims it did not pay taxes, had no bank accounts in South Sudan, and asked employees to sign contracts in dollars, but pays them in local currency at an unfairly low rate.
Since they have opened in 2006 in South Sudan, they have never been paying any single cent to the government of the Republic of South Sudan. So these people, the government of the Republic of South Sudan needs $650,000 US. If you calculate it in 2006 up to date, you will get 13 years. They have never been paying.
South Sudan's government says it encourages foreign investors in the country as long as they obey the law. The inside security company now says it is setting up a new management structure. The company says it will pay all back taxes and that it will start paying employees in dollars from this month in accordance with their contracts. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Staying in South Sudan, the government is being urged to step up efforts to trace over 4,000 missing persons and help them to reunite with their families. Thousands of people have been displaced by the 6-year conflict in the country.
Alice Nyagula is a 30-year-old mother of 4. She last saw her brother and his wife in 2013. They were separated when war broke out in South Sudan's capital, Juba. He left behind 3 of his children, who are now looked after by Alice.
If someone is dead, the news about his death can reach his or her relatives. Even if you have not seen the body, you will believe that the person is dead. But there is no news about my brother, so I will continue to look for him.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says cases of missing persons increased due to the 6 years of civil war in South Sudan. The ICRC says other forms of violence, such as cattle rustling, are also responsible for the separation of people from their families.
As part of our work on the missing in South Sudan, the ICRC advocates for legal frameworks and mechanisms for missing persons and for support to families of the missing.
Children with missing parents struggle for services such as education and health. Many parts of South Sudan do not have telecommunications or internet network. Contacts are sometimes impossible between family members living in different parts of the country. South Sudan's government says it is working to implement a peace deal which it says will make it easier to trace missing persons.
I believe that whatever we do in contributing to bringing lasting peace to this great country, and together we shall achieve it.
For Alice Nyagula, whether there is peace or not, she says she will continue to look for her brother. Patrick Oyet,
may be taking a turn for the better. At a press conference on Tuesday, a spokesman described the situation in Hong Kong and answered questions from the media. CGTN's Tang Bo has more.
Taking a positive turn. This is how Yang Guang, spokesperson for the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, sees the current situation in Hong Kong. But he also stressed that the situation is still grim, complex, and far from over.
We propose 3 suggestions. First, we hope the Hong Kong government and people from all sectors of society will reach a consensus about lessening turmoil, curbing violence, and bringing order back to Hong Kong. Secondly, we hope people can distinguish peaceful rallies from violent crimes and activities that challenge the one country, two systems principle. Third, we hope people can focus on fundamental issues of Hong Kong's economic development and improvement of people's livelihoods, contribute suggestions, and jointly seek solutions.
The unrest, which started in June, has entered its 13th week and has escalated, becoming more and more violent. Protesters have also increased their demand from withdrawing the fugitive bill to including democratic reform. Yang stressed that Hong Kong's universal suffrage system must be based on the region's political status.
What is Hong Kong's political status? Hong Kong is part of China. Hong Kong's political system, including universal suffrage, must come under such a political status. Article 43 of the Basic Law stipulates that the Chief Executive of Hong Kong shall be accountable to the Central People's Government and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. This is his or her most important duty and mission.
He continued that Hong Kong's universal suffrage, therefore, should be conducted upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures. He said that is the true nature of Hong Kong's universal suffrage and that there is no other option. Tang Bo, CGTN, Beijing.
Carrie Lam, Chief Executive of Hong Kong's Special Administrative Region, is refuting reports that she wanted to resign.
From the beginning, I have never issued the resignation to the central government. This is a clear message. The reason behind this is because I think, and I believe, I can lead my team to get Hong Kong out of the predicament. With 2 months of chaos, I understand the situation in Hong Kong is very difficult. We don't know when we can leave out of the chaos. But still, I have the confidence and responsibility to handle the current situation.
Well, this came after Reuters news agency released an audio recording and transcript of remarks made by Lam. She talked about her struggle since the protest began. Without full context on the whole conversation, the report said she would like to resign but cannot. Lam said the recording was a private conversation and that she's disappointed that it was released. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away, lots more to come, including WFP stops distributing blended food in Uganda as people fall sick in Palabek Refugee camp. And women survivors in the DRC provide care to children infected with Ebola.
For looking at economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The World Food Programme has suspended the distribution of super cereal stocks across Uganda's refugee camps for a second time this year. Over 30 refugees from the Palabek Refugee camp have been admitted to a nearby health centre after they consumed porridge made from cereal distributed by WFP. The agency says that it has set up an investigation into the possible food contamination. Distribution of the super cereal for Uganda's nutritional programs has also been stopped. In March this year, WFP suspended the distribution of the super cereal stocks following the death of 4 people in the northeast of the country. Well, for more on this, we are now joined by CGTN's Leon Esenyange, who is in Kampala for us. Leon, can you give us some more details and how many are affected?
Well, what has been confirmed to us is that it is 33 people that have been affected by this particular situation. They consumed, like you said earlier, they consumed the cereal, the super cereal, and this happened last Thursday, when most of them were admitted at the Palabek Health Center. Now, this center is within the Palabek Refugee camp in the northern part of Uganda. Many, of course, exhibited symptoms of vomiting there, and nausea, headache, and and what much was characterized by the previous case earlier this year, mental confusion. So yes, the WFP says that they are investigating this particular situation. As of when and how soon we expect results from this particular investigation, we can only wait, but there definitely may have been a lot of lessons not learned probably from the first situation earlier this year.
Well, as you say, there was another incident. It is the second time that the WFP has suspended cereal distribution. Why? Why is this happening?
Well, it really is and remains a very big concern in this particular point in time that it has occurred for the second time, just within a space of about 6 or fewer months. Then, earlier in March, about over 250 people fell ill as a result of consuming the blended super cereal, the porridge that was being distributed in the northeastern part. That was in Karamoja. 4 people lost their lives as a result of that particular incident. And yes, the investigations that were carried out there, unfortunately, or probably rather otherwise, suggested that there were no aflatoxins in the blended cereal. So little probably was left within the conclusions of what was discovered from the blended cereals. And those actually were halted from distribution. The particular cereals in question were from Turkey, while others continued to be distributed within the system. So several questions now remain on whether the same particular product has been brought back into the system, and why would they be brought back into distribution, what were the loopholes in ensuring that the blockage of this particular distribution of the super cereal are. So there definitely will be several questions to be asked at this point in time as to why this particular situation is occurring for the second time, and in a very, very short time of about 4 or 6 months.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Leon Esenyange there in Kampala for us. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe and the World Food Programme have completed an assessment of food security in the country. The southern African country seeks to find ways of mitigating looming drought and alleviating deepening poverty. CGTN's Farai Wakatuya has more.
Widowed, unemployed, and with many hungry mouths to feed, Anna Mabara's situation is desperate.
Some days, I visit my neighbors when it's mealtime, and at least they will offer me some food. My grandchildren end up scavenging through rubbish to eat what's been thrown away.
She isn't the only one in need of assistance here.
I have 5 children, and including me and my wife. This is a family of 7, and we cannot afford to buy enough food to eat.
They can't wait for the government handouts, but want the food distributed fairly.
The government needs to rescue us and follow up to make sure everyone who needs food is getting it.
At least 2.2 million urban dwellers are in line for food aid as the impact of a severe drought and worsening economy bite. Donors estimate about $331 million is required to feed more than 7.5 million Zimbabweans, nearly half the population, between now and the next harvest. But some here feel parceling out food alone won't be enough to get them out of their dire straits.
We will continue wallowing in poverty unless the financial and economic situation is addressed. Unless prices stabilize, we will not be able to make ends meet. It's good government is helping us, but even if I'm given grain, I will still need money to mill it.
Government plans to begin urban food distribution later in September. Hopefully, that won't be too late for some here who are already face to face with hunger. Farai Wakatuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
On to Somalia now, and China has provided educational scholarships to successful students who sat the national examinations last year. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo reports now from Mogadishu on what this means for the country's educational sector.
Senior government officials and diplomats from the Chinese embassy attended this farewell ceremony in Mogadishu. 57 top students from across the country will travel to China to receive learning opportunities through a Chinese government-funded scholarship program.
I'm grateful for this great opportunity. It has always been my dream to study in China. I thank the Ministry of Education and China for the education scholarship for Somali students.
It's an honor to stand in front of you all. I wish my colleagues the best of luck in their studies. We promise to take advantage of this golden opportunity.
Every year, Beijing provides learning opportunities to some of the country's top students. Medicine and engineering in recent years have become two of the most preferred learning courses by most Somali students. The Chinese ambassador to Somalia, Xinjiang, says his country hopes to increase scholarship opportunities for Somali students in the future.
Your future of Somali, studying hard, master skills, make a positive progress and contribute your wisdom and youth to the country and the people. I hope Chinese government could provide more than 100 scholarships to Somali every year.
It's important that you respect and uphold the values, rules and regulations in China. You are here to represent Somalia as a country. Take advantage of the free learning opportunity and come back as doctors and help your country and your people.
Last year, 41 students were accorded learning opportunities in China under a similar program. Hundreds of students who benefited from such programs have since returned home to help rebuild the Horn of African nation.
I would like to mention here, I was one of the students who got the scholarship in 2015, and I did my master in China. I would like to thank the People's Republic of China and the government of China on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
In 2018, Beijing provided more than $20 million in humanitarian assistance, including another $10 million in the first half of 2019. Funds that were used to assist millions facing malnutrition and food insecurity. Somalia recently signed a memorandum of understanding with China to join the Belt and Road Initiative, following an official state visit by the Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo to China. The Horn of African nation takes pride in being the first East African country to create diplomatic ties with China and is now seeking assistance in rebuilding vital infrastructure destroyed during the decades-long civil war. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo has claimed the lives of many parents, leaving children with the disease struggling alone. Healthcare workers are not allowed to touch the children because of the risk of infection, but a group of women who have been cured of Ebola have stood in. They're known as lullaby singers. CGTN's Chris Ocharinga caught up with them in the eastern DRC town of Beni and now reports.
Rebecca Katungu is a survivor of Ebola living in the DRC's eastern town of Beni. She contracted the disease in May this year, but she was taken early for treatment and was cured.
When I got infected with Ebola, I was put on treatment at a unit inside our hospital. I'm now free of the disease.
She's now immune to Ebola because her system has developed antibodies that protect her against reinfection. Rebecca and other women like her now take care of children infected with Ebola at a treatment center in Beni. They have been nicknamed the Lullaby Singers. Neema Lepisa is one of these women who's taken care of many children orphaned by the epidemic.
The health experts asked us to start taking care of children whose parents are in isolation or dead because we cannot get reinfected with Ebola.
She feeds and soothes the babies in the absence of their mothers. The women who have volunteered to take care of children infected with Ebola are playing a vital role in the fight against the disease. Records from health experts show that the current outbreak in the DRC has affected more children than the one that occurred in West Africa between 2014 and 2016. Healthcare workers treating Ebola patients cannot touch the children because they could be infected. And so the only human touch the children get is from lullaby singers like Rebecca and Neema. The women also help spread the word that Ebola can be cured if patients are treated early. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Beni, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Well, let's now go to Ucha. She's got all the latest business news for us. Over to you.
Thanks, Karen. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. China lodges a complaint against the U.S. at the World Trade Organization over American import duties. And Cape Town, South Africa is all set for the 2019 World Economic Forum on Africa that starts on Wednesday.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sue. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off with the ongoing trade war between China and the United States. Beijing has lodged a complaint against the U.S. with the World Trade Organization, and that's over American import duties. Now, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce says Washington's latest tariffs violate the consensus which was reached by the presidents of China and the U.S. at a meeting in late June. Now, the ministry also says that China will firmly defend its legal rights in accordance with WTO rules. Washington began imposing additional 15% tariffs on a variety of Chinese goods on Sunday, including footwear, smartwatches, and flat panel televisions. China responded with new duties on American products, including its crude oil. Meanwhile, the 28th session of the World Economic Forum on Africa takes place in Cape Town, South Africa from Wednesday. Now, September 4th to Friday to September 6th is when the meetings kick off. And this year's focus is shaping inclusive growth and shared futures in the fourth industrial revolution. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with more.
Over 1,000 delegates will be on hand, but there's a dark cloud hanging over the conversations that will take place in the mother city, Cape Town, this week.
So the issue of the trade wars and these trade tensions is a very important one for us. And I'm quite certain that during the conversations, this issue will keep coming to the fore in order that the message must get through, particularly to those people in Washington, that these trade wars are not helpful to us and to the global economy.
The meeting will focus on the fourth industrial revolution and how it can enable economic growth on the continent. But the question keeps coming up. Is Africa ready for the fourth industrial revolution, especially when it comes to skills?
We as a continent, and South Africa as well, are challenged in terms of the low education base that we have when we look at our entire populations, and the fourth industrial revolution just creates more pressure. The way we choose to see it, and here I take the liberty of quoting Professor Klaus Schwab, is that the fourth industrial revolution can actually help us to catalyze some of the gaps that emerge from the first revolution, second revolution, and the third revolution. We should not see them as separate issues. It's really more as the same spectrum and moving in tandem.
The forum happens soon after the continent ratified the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Against this background of these trade wars, nevertheless, Africans are organizing themselves into the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, so we appreciate that very much.
The key themes around this World Economic Forum Africa are essential for the development of the continent and its 54 countries. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And staying in South Africa, the country's economy grew more than expected in the second quarter thanks to a recovery in mining and manufacturing. Now, Statistics South Africa reports a 3.1% growth for for the 3 months to June after a revised contraction of 3.1% in the first quarter. The economy has struggled to regain momentum after a downturn in the first half of 2018 when farming plunged, posting a shock contraction. The news should come in as a reprieve for President Cyril Ramaphosa, who came to power on the promise of economic recovery. Now, some analysts say that while the growth could see South Africa avoid recession in 2019, it still is not enough to stop credit rating downgrades linked to debt issues, including bailouts for state power firm Eskom. Well, it's a different story. The continent's largest oil producer, Nigeria's economy slowed to 1.94% in the 3 months to the end of June as the country struggles to shake off the effects of a recession, which of course it slightly missed 2 years ago. Now, Nigeria had grown by 2.1% in the first quarter of this year. Africa's biggest economy has been held back by sluggish performance in the non-oil sector, despite government efforts to boost those industries and wean Nigeria off crude oil. Now, the Statistics Office records that the non-oil sector witnessed a growth of 1.64%, while the oil sector increased 5.15%. The central bank has forecast a growth of 3% for 2019. And approximately 155 million mobile money transactions worth about $2.7 billion are conducted in Somalia every month. This makes the country one of the most active mobile money markets in the world, with over 70% of its adults using the services regularly. Well, CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo explores how mobile money has impacted the Somali economy.
Mulki Mohammed is doing her shopping at this popular mall in downtown Mogadishu. Business is booming in the Somali capital, with shops such as this operating until late at night. Traders hope to take advantage of improved security in the city to accommodate last-minute shoppers. Telecom companies are largely credited for improving sales in major towns. Mulki is using her mobile to pay her expenses and is not worried about the safety of her money, as it's more secure than physical cards and cash.
Before, we had to go to the bank, fill various forms and queue to receive money. Mobile companies now have a direct means from which we can access our money directly from our mobile phones. I can now receive and send money from my account to my phone in a matter of seconds.
Mobile payment has increased our sales volume. Our clients purchase things from us easily through their phones. Unlike cash payment, we don't worry about balance. Telecom companies allow us to send money no matter how big or small the product or service being bought.
The country has a vibrant telecommunications sector that has thrived despite decades of conflict and instability. Virtually all mobile telecommunication operators here in the country provide mobile-to-mobile payments at no extra cost, facilitating trade in the country. Leading banks have also partnered with such companies to ensure their clients can access their money at any time through their mobile phones.
Lack of banknotes and weak currency values are some of the factors that has led to the growth of mobile cash payments. For instance, 25,000 Somali shillings is equivalent to $1. That is why many prefer having their cash directly in their phones.
A prolonged conflict in the Horn of Africa nation has seen the destruction of the country's currency. Instead, the country has seen a dollarized economy that supersedes the use of cash.
Mobile payment is free of charge in Somalia. This will have a negative impact to the government when it introduces new currency. It's not wise for the entire society to rely on mobile payment because it has its own challenges. The government also has to regulate it.
A research by the World Bank also indicates that approximately 155 million transactions worth $2.7 billion, or roughly 36% of the gross domestic product, are recorded every month, making Somalia one of the most active mobile money markets in the African continent. Abdulaziz Billo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, in other news, the Argentine peso lost more than 25% of its value in August, and that's after primary election results showed that the market-friendly government has a little chance of staying in power. Now, the falling peso has pushed up food prices in the country, and that's affected beef sales and consumption. Take a look.
Argentinians love barbecue and they can't live without meat. South American cowboys riding a horse on the plain in the daytime and sitting around a bonfire to enjoy prime steak was a special scene in the country.
Meat for us is very important, and it's very difficult for an Argentine to go a day without eating meat.
But Argentina's ailing economy and slumping peso are making cattle pasture owners and steak lovers unhappy. Cattle farmers used to make a living with large agriculture export, but now they choose to halt sales. Although less supply helped increase price, this also forced steak buyers to reduce other living expense or finding substitute.
The dollar more or less rose by 20%, with meat rising by 18%, but we can't raise prices for the customers by more than 10%, so that's when you notice the economic problem. If the customers comes along and sees you've raised the prices by 10%, what happens? Instead of filling the freezer as they did before, now they put less into the freezer and tries to find other options such as chicken, fish or vegetables.
And the issue with the devaluation we had there, speculations will continue and some will rise the prices more than others, as we're seeing right now. Others, in order to survive, will keep the prices, and let's hope they don't go up too much.
Argentina has been in recession since 2018 and is battling rising unemployment and one of the world's highest inflation rates, running at more than 55%. Last week, Argentina asked the International Monetary Fund to restructure its debt payments on a $56 billion bailout loan agreed last year. The IMF said it was studying the new measures taken by the Marconi government. Guanxin, CGTN.
And shifting focus now, a trainee pilot in Australia was forced to make an emergency landing of a small aircraft on Saturday, and that's after his instructor fell unconscious. Well, Max Sylvester was having his first lesson behind the controls of a single propeller two-seater Cessna 152 when the incident occurred. He said his aviation studies saved his life. Well, Sylvester called air traffic control in Western Australia state and said that the instructor was leaning over his shoulder and he was having trouble keeping him up. The controller then guided Sylvester through the landing after the trainee pilot told him it was his first lesson. Sylvester landed the plane safely at Jandakot Airport.
I was pretty messed up in the head, to be honest. It was pretty hard to know that my instructor wasn't doing too well. So it was just a matter of getting us down to the ground and getting onto the right station to actually, talk to somebody to help us down. It's just one of the things you train for it when you're in your 20s and 30 hours, not 2.4 hours. You don't train for this type of stuff, so you just got to either have the passion for aviation and actually just do your study, because that's what kept me alive as well, is my study.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, we'll be looking at the billions at play in Africa's oil and gas sector and how Africa can get the most out of it. There's also a book to that effect. We'll be speaking to the author. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Carrie.
Thank you very much, Ucha. We are going to a short break. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Kenya launches first Chinese Film Week to boost cultural cooperation.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The first ever Chinese Film Week has opened here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, as part of activities to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. During the week, Kenyans will have the opportunity to explore Chinese cinema and gain a deeper understanding of Chinese culture. CGTN's Daniel Arapmoy has more.
Yes, so that you can launch and say that the film week has begun.
The launch of the Chinese Film Week comes as China marks 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Over the past 70 years, under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese people have fought hard with the determination to find a path of development suited to their own condition. China has now become the world's second largest economy, lifting millions of its people out of poverty. The Chinese Film Week in Kenya is one of the activities being used to celebrate the 70th anniversary as relations between the two countries rises.
In recent years, China-Kenya relations have developed by leaps and bounds. More and more Kenyans are studying Chinese language or going to China for study or visit. I believe the Film Week will provide a window for Kenyans to know more about the history, the culture, and development of China.
The rapid growth of Chinese entertainment industry gives an opportunity for enrichment of our local content. It also offers opportunity for our artists to learn from Chinese artists how to enrich their performances in entertainment.
During the Chinese Film Week, 9 movies will be shown to the public. The films will touch different topics with themes ranging from drama, comedy, action and romance.
Our cooperation with China on culture and in general and in film in particular have been running for a long period of time and continues to grow over the years.
Last year alone, the box office sales in China reached $8.5 billion. The Chinese box office is expected to register $12.28 billion by 2020, surpassing North America as the world's largest film market. Daniel Arapmoy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including veteran coach Hassan Shehata poised for return at the helm of Egypt football team.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The troubled Egyptian Football Association is expected to announce the national team's new head coach. Former coach Hassan Shehata is favourite for the job after leading Egypt to 3 consecutive Africa Cup of Nations titles from 2006 to 2010. Here's CGTN's Adel El Mahrouhi with more.
Without an elected board or a coaching team, the EFA is in a rush to hire a new coach for the Pharaohs. Frustrated with its recent foreign coaches' experience, who have led the national team to an embarrassing exit from the World Cup and this year's Africa Cup of Nations, Egypt is settled on hiring a local.
The process of selecting the new head coach is taking place in a more democratic style. Previously, EFA President Hani Abu Reda will take the decision on his own. We are seeing the interim board as setting criteria. Among them is previous record, foreign experience and personal qualifications. After filtration, they are set on 2 names, Ihab Galal and Hassan Shehata.
Shehata is by far a more recognizable name among Egyptian fans. The 72 years old has made African history by winning 3 consecutive Africa Cup of Nations titles. making Egypt the continent's record holder. But that doesn't necessarily make him the best for the current team.
الفوز أفريقيا 3 مرات ورا بعض ده إنجاز تاريخي يحسب لحسن شحاتة.
3 African titles is an unforgettable achievement for Shahata. Football, however, develops fast. Following these 3 titles, Shahata has begun his down curve and has not recovered from it since. Even the clubs he trained have all failed. Ihab Galal is younger, he has a fresher football vision and understands how to rise with weak Egyptian football teams. He has always worked to develop his style and is flexible to change.
فأعتقد إنه حسن شحاتة في الوقت الحالي.
The Pharaohs' new head coach will begin the qualifications for the 2021 AFCON in less than 2 months from his appointment. He'll also be expected to take Egypt to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar.
It is not fair to compare between Shahata and Galal, the 2 finalists to lead the Pharaohs. Shahata brings back the nostalgia of Egypt's peak in African football. No one could compare with that. The Egyptian national team, however, may need the change Galal represents much more. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Egypt has been celebrating a colossal victory following the conclusion of the 2019 African Games in Morocco. Egypt won a total of 273 medals, that's 102 gold, 98 silver and 73 bronze, breaking Nigeria's record of 240 medals in the Games. Tennis made history as 2 Egyptian tennis players qualified to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics for the first time in the nation's history. They returned home to a warm reception.
Tennis made history in the African Games this year. We've won gold, silver and bronze. We have people in the Olympics for the first time in history. We brought pride to our country. We look forward to getting more support from the country, especially for the 2 players who will be playing in the Olympics. Tennis has brought joy to Egyptians in the African Games. We hope to do the same in the future.
We were confident that Egypt will win first place in the African Games. We, however, set pessimistic goals in our planning. To be safe, we aimed for 65 gold medals. We've won 102. We planned for 182 medals in total. We've won 273 overall. We are glad not because of the result, but because we had the potential to win more. With some focus, we could have won 40 more medals.
South Africa has named a strong side for their final Rugby World Cup warm-up match against host Japan this Friday. Springboks head coach Rassie Erasmus says the contest could be the perfect preparation for his side ahead of their tournament opener against New Zealand. Erasmus made sweeping changes to the squad that claimed victory over Argentina last month, with captain Siya Kolisi returning as flanker for Friday's clash in Kumagaya. Kolisi's inclusion is the only difference from the 23-man squad for the draw with New Zealand in July, which means Japan can expect to face the full might of the Springboks.
Yes, I think 2 things is we respect Japan a lot. You know, we think they're a very good team. They're ranked number 9 in the world. And the second thing is, we want to prepare for New Zealand, which we play in 2 weeks' time. But first we play Japan, which beat us the last time. So that's why we picked a very strong team in respect for Japan.
There's a lot more attention to detail. So let's say breakdown-wise, the ball might pop out. So we're really working on the small detail to get that perfected and make sure everyone knows exactly what to do, especially with the ball being slippery and wet.
And staying in Japan, where rugby players aged above 40 years seem to enjoy playing rugby for leisure. The players who know the adverse effects of playing a high-impact sport at their age don't seem to be bothered and say that they're willing to die for the sport. CGTN's Mahir Matua has more.
Japan will be the host of the 2019 Rugby World Cup later this month, but that is not the most interesting thing. The country's veteran rugby players are. In a country where the loneliness of the elderly is a huge concern, rugby not only offers a ready-made social life, but also keeps the players active.
You tackle and battle each other, but the gathering after the play is so enjoyable and fun. We talk about how each other plays, and no one gets angry about how we played. The atmosphere is great. In short, there's nothing but rugby.
The Fuwaku Club was founded in 1948 and is part of approximately 150 Japanese clubs that stage competitive, full-contact matches for players over the age of 40.
I was really surprised because the scene doesn't really exist in the UK, certainly not at 60, 70, so it was a really welcome surprise. Good way of making friends.
And as players run, pass, maul, scrum and crash into one another, injuries are inevitable, and the oldest team member, who's also a practicing doctor, can attest to that.
So since I joined Fuwaku Club, I have broken my ribs many times and broke my collarbone too. There are many other things. When I noticed an irregular pulse, I will take medicine to adjust. So I can still do it. No, I can't stand not playing. That's it. This may sound strange, but I lost my wife years ago, and now I will say I don't mind dying playing rugby.
It is estimated that there are over 10,000 veteran rugby players currently playing at clubs across Japan, with the Fuwaku Rugby Club alone having 300 players competing across all age categories. Mahe Mutwa, CGTN.
World 100 metres favourite Christian Coleman is eligible to compete in this month's World Championships and the 2020 Olympics after a whereabouts charge against the American sprinter was withdrawn by the US anti-doping agency. USADA had charged Coleman with 3 failures to properly file whereabouts information in a 12-month period, a potential anti-doping violation. The case had been scheduled to go to arbitration on Wednesday, but USADA, after receiving guidance from the World Anti-Doping Agency on how to calculate the 12-month window, withdrew the charge. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. Thank you for watching and see you again soon. Bye for now.